Hey, good morning, everybody. Hey, all right. My name is Warren, and one of the pastors here at City Church. How many of you have already turned on your heat in your house? Raise your hand. Okay, all right, I feel you. I have also turned on the heat in my house, but that's because my wife said so, okay? It is on in my house as well. And how many of you are like, I am not ready for cold? Is there anybody out here who is, okay, I agree. Give me the heat. I want it. I will take it all day long. I want to be able to stand in a body of water and fish and not be freezing cold. And so I'm not quite ready for this cool weather. I'm so excited this morning to jump into a new series with you guys. But before we move to that space, there's probably one question that I could ask everyone in this room, every single person today, including myself, and we would probably all give a very similar answer. It's a very simple question and one that many of you probably get asked every single day. And it's this question: how are you? How are you? People say it so enthusiastically and they act like they really want to know, how you doing today? And let's be honest, I'm right there with you. We all answer most of the time the same way: I am good. Some of you go, oh, good, I'm good. It gets a little higher as you really maybe aren't good, But a lot of us, if we were honest, this is our response to the question, I am good. For too many of us, this is just a programmed response, myself included. We don't even have to hear the whole question, and we already know we are going to say, I am good. But why do we always say, I'm good? I'm good. I'm excited today to start a new series with you guys called The Battle Within. The battle within. And here's the thing that many of us know and feel: there's a war waging inside of us, and most people never talk about it. Anxiety, stress, emotional exhaustion, brokenness are more common than we care to admit today. In a culture that constantly asks, how are you, but rarely waits for the real answer. In this series, we want to slow down a little bit and explore what it's really going to be like to look beneath the surface, the battle within. As we think about the battle within, I think if we were just to take the word that we hear a lot today in the world that exists, this word would really be mental health. I was teaching a leadership class this past weekend, Griffin and Spalding leadership class, and really had the opportunity to talk about communication. And one of the things we do in that class is we put all of the generations up on the board and we talk about their mode of communication. And it was really unique to move through those and to talk about things they would understand, but we don't understand. And really mental health didn't become like a true topic until we started to get into the millennial generation. But it's beginning to grow, and here's why. As we think about mental health, here's how we can define it. It's a state of well-being in which every individual, hear this closely, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community and or family. Mental health, it affects how we think and how we feel about ourselves and others. It's how we interpret events. It's how we learn and how we cope with life events and how we develop and sustain relationships. Now, here's where we begin to understand why it's so important for us to talk about this series. And I want to zoom in specifically to the state of Georgia. So according to Georgia Public Health, this was put out this year, 1.4 million adults in Georgia have a mental health condition. That is 2 times the population of Atlanta and is about 1 in every 7 adults in Georgia. Now, as we move further down into ages, we find that the stat increases more in children in Georgia, where 1 in 6 children ages 6 to 17 battle with mental health. As a matter of fact, this is a stat that we don't love to share, but here in Spalding County, we are above the average for suicide rates the last 4 years in Spalding County, with 53 suicides in kids this year alone. It's affecting all of us in some way. Depression, anxiety are among the most serious and burdensome health conditions in the U.S. today. And maybe as you hear this, you don't think, well, that's not a thing, but let me talk about the negative impacts: difficulty sleeping, poor eating habits. I'm not okay, guys. I put down a big old honey bun the other night. Increases in alcohol and substance abuse, suicidal thoughts, or impacts of mental health. So let me ask you again, how are you? As we think about those statistics, those are some maybe alarming things, but I think the most alarming thing that I could share with you today as we think about mental health is that only 50% of those that experience battles with mental health actually seek help. So 1 out of every 2 actually seek out help in their battle with anxiety or depression and the struggle with mental health. And so this stat, when I think about it, actually leads to what we would call blow up. If I'm not willing to ask, if I'm one of the 50% and I'm not seeking out help, where does all that go at some point? It's 50% of people who are saying, you know what, I'm not okay, and I'm not going to tell anybody. It's 50% of people that are not finding a community where they can step in and they can say, I'm not okay. It's 50% of people who are not running to Jesus and saying, I'm not okay. So where is all the pressure, the anxiety going and building? It's going to blow. I like to think of it as a balloon. Now, I found out this week that people have extreme fears and anxiety over balloons. If that's you today, you might want to leave. No, I'm just kidding. Don't leave. Don't leave. I learned, whether it's popping or whatever it is. But I think of it this way, right? At some point, if I were to just keep putting pressure on this balloon, it only has one option. If I keep adding the pressure and I never let anything out, what is it going to do? It's going to pop. It's going to blow up. Now, here's the fun thing that we all like. Okay, there we go. So the question that I have for you, before the balloon fills up, what do we do before the blow up? You see all the statistics we've mentioned. Here's the thing that we have to understand. You say, Warren, but not in the church, right? Well, actually, the church mirrors the same statistics. So how do we take a healthy look as a church at mental health? How can we move to a confidence to say, I'm not okay before the blow up comes? Because here's the thing, as a church, we should be leading the charge. And I'm so excited that we're going to step in this series. Even in a couple of weeks, up here on stage with Josh is actually going to be his counselor. Now, they're not going to have a counseling session in front of all of you guys, okay? But he's going to come and we're going to get the opportunity to hear the impact of what it's been for Josh. But as we move into this series, we have to start somewhere. And the question for you is, how are you? We find in the Bible Apostle Paul, who actually helped start the church as we know it today. And we pick up in 2 Corinthians chapter number 12, and we're going to be there all morning. So you're welcome to follow me on the screen, or you're welcome to open your Bibles or your Bible app, whatever it is that you would like to do, but they will be on the screen. And what we do here at City Church is we put the verses up on the screen and we just kind of take them and dissect them a little bit. And so as we pick up here in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, we found that Paul is actually kind of defending his ministry. His ministry's kind of under attack, and they're forcing against him. And so he's talking about all the things that Christ has done. And then he moves to himself. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 5, the second half of that verse, this is what Paul says. He says, I will not boast except of my weaknesses. I will not boast except of my weaknesses. What was his weakness? We find this in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse number 7. He says this, so to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations. And so of the revelations is this, he's been receiving these things from Christ, these revelations from Christ. And he could stand before everyone and say, these are the things that I've received from Christ. But this is what he says. He says, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. Before sharing his weakness, Paul admits something that we have to grasp when we're asked the question, how are you? It's something that could have kept him actually from sharing his weakness, and it's this right here. It's the word conceited. So to keep me from being conceited, in other words, he was saying to keep pride away. To keep from saying, look what I can do, look what I did, I got this. Paul could have boasted in all those revelations he received. And here's the thing, I think a lot of times when we're asked the question, how are you? The root of us saying, I am good is really pride. It's really just saying, I'm good and I can handle this on my own. Pride will always keep you from the freedom to say you are not okay. It will always keep you from recognizing and speaking your weakness. And so how does Paul combat this pride? He recognizes his weakness. And that weakness, we see it in this passage as a thorn. And this thorn specifically was not just a thorn you would find in a rose. It actually, in its original context, would mean a stake. And here's what it does. It frustrates and causes trouble in the lives of those afflicted. Now, you don't have to raise your hand, but let's have a moment together. Do you have something in your life, don't nudge your spouse, that frustrates you and causes trouble in the life of your day-to-day, morning, afternoon, and evening? Let's all be honest. Somewhere in this room, you can admit you have a thorn. You have a thorn. You may not recognize it, but I hope today is by the end of it, you recognize there is a thorn, there is something that frustrates and causes trouble in my life. This thorn, it frustrated Paul. But why even speak of it? He gives the details. He actually says this, and this is something as we read it, it can be even difficult to understand. But he sends, we find that a messenger of Satan is sent to harass me. And that word harass, I like to think of it when I was a kid. I have an older brother. And I don't know what it is about brothers, but they just like to pop you. You know what I'm saying? They just come up and you're just sitting there and they're just like, and then I didn't do that. I'm just kidding. Maybe a few times. But Paul speaks of this harassment that exists. Now, let's be clear. This is not a possession from the enemy. This is a harassment, to strike with the fist, to continually punch and punch and punch. This can be difficult, but we have to understand it brings to light this passage in 1 Peter 5, 8 through 9. It says, be sober-minded, be watchful, your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering, here we are, this is you and me, are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. We all are being harassed. We all are being punched by fist. The enemy is not stagnant. He is seeking to devour. But Paul knew something that for a minute I had to step back and I had to say, really? This is really, you feel this about this. And this is what he says, given me, which to Paul meant this is painful, but purposeful. Paul said this, it's been given me, he may be harassing me, but God has a purpose behind this pain. It is painful, but it is purposeful. This thorn and constant striking, it was not easy for him. And how do we know it was not easy for him? Because in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, the next verse 8, he says this, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. Pleaded 3 times. Would you take this thorn away? Would you stop the harassment? And I am sure that in this room, there is someone who is pleading right now. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I'm not okay. Lord, please, Lord, please, Lord, please. I think this reveals something to us. I think we have to be careful sometimes when we talk about mental health. Because here's what Paul does when he says he pleaded 3 times. He's actually repeating something he actually has said also in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Not just once, but 3 times he pleaded. 3 times he asked, God, would you take this away? He would have been happy if it was gone. And I think we have to be careful sometimes with mental health. Because sometimes we are told, well, just pray it away. Now, yes. Can he do it? Yes, he can. Won't he do it? Yes, he can. But the basis of our prayer, we're going to find from Paul, is that God had something in store for him that was greater than the answer to the prayer he really wanted. He would have been happy if the thorn was gone. What was that thorn? Scholars have always thought, and they really don't know what the thorn was. Guess what? I don't either. I don't know. Paul doesn't tell us. And I think he doesn't tell us because this is why. Because he wanted you to be able to empathize with him. He wanted you to just name your thorn. He wanted you to be able to say, this is the thing that just keeps badgering me. This is my thorn. 3 times in 2 Corinthians 12:8, he said, I pleaded with the Lord that he would take it away. And so if it was not taken, why all of this? Why all of this? And how does this help you? And how does this help me when I'm asked, how are you? And I'm actually not okay, but I say I am good. Paul asked God to remove it, and this is God's response in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 9. God responds to Paul and he says, my grace is sufficient. Somebody say, his grace is sufficient. Somebody say it like you believe it this morning. His grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient for you, Paul, for my power is made perfect in what? In strength. And saying, I'm good. No, my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, Paul says, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. You see, God is doing something in Paul's life with a thorn. When he says, my grace is sufficient for you, my power is made perfect in weakness, here's what he's saying. He says, you may feel empty, tired, or not enough, but that's exactly where God's power shines. That's exactly where his strength comes. And Paul gets this, and though the enemy may try to rob me, God is doing something. This thorn and this constant punching is doing something great. And so Paul flips it on his head in the end of that passage of verse number 9. He says, therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Can we pause and agree for a second that this is not the world we live in? Nobody's ready to brag about their weaknesses. Nobody's ready to stand up and boast about their weaknesses. We all want to answer with, I'm good. Good. Paul all along was willing to say that I'm not okay. I will gladly share my weaknesses so that the power of Christ may do this. And I love this, the word rest. The word rest down here at the bottom of this passage is actually the kind of rest where you rest a home on a place. You take up possession. And so Paul is saying, I will gladly boast about my weaknesses because when I admit that I am weak, he rests. He takes possession. He shows up for me. His power is my foundation in every weakness. You need to know this today and take this with you, that God's strength shows up where yours runs out. It shows up where yours runs out. Are you tired of the battle within? Are you tired and weary? In this series each week, I'm so excited to share steps and to see those things happen as we walk through this series on mental health. But you have to start here. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 5. You have to start where Paul started. I will not boast. I'm not going to boast in the things that I've done or that I can do or I will do. I'm not going to boast in the thing I accomplished at my job. I'm not going to boast in my possessions. I'm not going to boast in the new vehicle I got. I'm not going to boast at the fact that I won the state championship in high school 25 years ago. I'm not going to boast about those things, but I'm going to boast about my weaknesses. Because here's what it does. It makes less of me and more of Him. And when there's less of me and more of Him, there's greater strength. He shows up when we run out. Paul could have leaned in to his pride and his successes, but he didn't. And so we have to know this, as we move into the series of Battle Within, you have to start here. Pride has to go out the window. Out the window today of two people. To the one today who feels weak and the enemy is telling you this, to boast in your own strength and not to take a step. I would say admit your weaknesses. To the other person today who is here, and this is something we cannot have in the church, and pride is telling you, look at their weaknesses, you are strong. To make you feel better about your own, I would say, admit your weaknesses. Listen, every person here has a battle within that impacts your mental health. I'm not going to ask you to stand and to share your thorn, but I know that we all could. And I think to illustrate that, the best thing I could do is to pull out this balloon again and share a story with you. Monday begins with a smile. She's practiced. You know, the one that says she's all good before anyone even asked. But Monday started and the kids are late and the coffee is already spilled. And already her inbox is full, faster than her lungs can exhale. Tuesday. She answers every "how are you" with "good, just busy." As if busy were a badge and not a bruise. By Wednesday, her husband's silence feels heavier than the laundry that waits in the corner. She scrolls her phone in bed, pretending not to notice. Thursday. She pushes through the meetings, comes home and pushes through dinner and homework, her voice calm, her hands trembling under the table. And Friday finally comes. Friday comes and it's at that point where the pressure is felt and she laughs awkwardly at the office joke to hide how she really feels. And then she drives home in quiet tears, wondering how long she can convince everyone, including herself, that she's okay. Monday. It hits. Before he's even ready. Alarms and meetings, deadlines. He tells his coworkers he's doing good, even though he's been waking up at 4 a.m. with his heart racing for reasons he can't name. Tuesday. He skips lunch so he can take a meeting. Then he rushes home to change, only to leave and go catch his son's practice with a tight smile but convincing. Wednesday comes. His wife asks, "Are you okay?" He jokes and he says, "I'm just tired," and quickly changes the subject. Thursday, it feels like a blur. Calls, bills, responsibilities, and a weight that he can't quite set down. He gets news that day of someone who he's lost. Friday comes. Finally, it's Friday. He sits in his car a few extra minutes before walking inside with the radio low and the quiet louder than he wants to admit. He tells himself he's fine, but even he is starting not to believe it. We all have a thorn. You feel it. I feel it. A blow up is coming. Today, the only thing that I can do with this is recognize it and say, I can't do this anymore. I'm not okay. And His power becomes perfect in our weakness. And so today, as we start this series, take the first step and say, I'm not okay. And this morning, if you're here and you're like, I need to know more, I need to take another step, here's what we've done. You can actually text the word care to the number on the screen. And what this is going to do for you, this is actually going to send you a link on our website where there is just resources listed, but specifically at the bottom of the page, there's a place where you can actually fill out a form. And as a church, we want to pay for your first session of counseling. Because here's the thing, we believe this. Mental health is important because God created you. He created your mental health. And so because it's important to Him, it's important to us. And so if you're here today and you need to take that step, would you take that step today?